Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
And welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. It is still the month of October, and I have as guest today Aly Grauer of the Warda Podcast, which you may have heard of, and if not, we're definitely going to be talking about it. And I had the pleasure of meeting Aly at MegaCon this year, which was incredibly awesome. Welcome to the podcast, Aly.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
It is absolutely a pleasure. I think I started following you on Twitter when you had moved down here, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we crossed paths on the Twitter, but I definitely remember we suddenly just started seeing each other's tweets a lot, and then it happened that we were both going to be at MegaCon, and you were kind enough to take a couple minutes to come find me where I was stuck at a booth. Not even my own booth, I'll add. I was working for someone else at the time. But it was great to meet you. And I love meeting other people with podcasts because it's something that I never in a million years thought I would be doing. And it's something that I love to do now. And it takes up a good chunk of my daily time. So I love meeting new podcasters and hanging out with people and stuff. And honestly, when we moved down here, we didn't really know anybody. So it was nice to know that there are real people out there with real podcasts. And like we're not just like a satellite on an asteroid somewhere.
Exactly. I think it's actually James D'Amato who had posted something that said like, oh, Aly's moving down. Anybody that lives in the Orlando area should be friends with her. And I was like, I could do that.
Yeah, which is super nice because that's always nice when you move to a new place and you don't know anybody.
Exactly. And as far as like being on an asteroid, it's totally my feeling. Sometimes I'm like, I'm talking into a microphone. I'm putting things out. I see people downloading it, but no one's talking like there's no feedback sometimes.
Yeah, it can be tough. And it was an interesting experience moving down here from Chicago, where we were in the hub of so many creative endeavors and so many creative projects with so many awesome, talented people. Constantly, like Drew and I were playing games all the time in Chicago, and then we moved down here and we had a good couple of months where there were no games, just tumbleweeds and sad. But now we're starting to get back into the swing of things, and we're playing more games, we're meeting people, and starting to feel like people again,
Yeah, totally. And Chicago, one of my friends, Joey, he's nomadic on Twitter. He's up in Chicago, and it's always like there's always something going on up there, either like gaming wise, podcast wise, a combination of both, just all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and we're our podcast Warda is a part of the One Shot Podcast Network, so we were working with James all the time and doing things on their Twitch stream and meeting up with other people to do games and talk on their podcast on the network. And it was like super exciting and bustly and metropolitan. And then we moved away and we kind of went, did we just shoot ourselves in the foot? Like, what are we going to be okay? But things even out. And thanks, as you and I were just talking about, the blessings of technology, you're able to kind of reconnect with people and play games long distance or just meet up to chat over a podcast, which is great.
Exactly. And we are here to talk about some incredible different things. Some of the stuff, I don't think I've covered any of what we're going to talk about on this podcast episode.
Oh, yeah?
So I'm excited. I'm going to start with a show that has made its return. It's had a comeback. And I originally grew up watching this show back in, I don't know, middle school, maybe high school-ish. And that is Ducktales.
Woo! Yep. So Ducktales is back. I don't know if you listeners knew that, but it's back in a big way. I think a lot of people in a certain age bracket have very, very, very fond memories of things like a Disney afternoon on TV. So we're talking about DuckTales. We're talking about Darkwing Duck, which takes place in the same universe. We're talking about Tailspin, which takes place in the same universe. We're talking about Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, which doesn't take place in the same universe, but I think it's adjacent. Good Disney cartoons on the Saturday mornings and whatnot. DuckTales is, for the uninitiated, about Donald Duck's extended family is the short version of that. Donald Duck being, of course, Mickey's prime rival and frenemy. And his extended family includes his uncle Scrooge McDuck, who is the richest duck in the world. And Donald's nephews, so the triplet children of his sister, which, you know, at first glance, DuckTales is like, you're like, okay, cool, they're related to Donald somehow. But the more you pay attention to that, and the new series gets into this a lot, the wilder it gets. I didn't realize that the Duck family tree was so extensive, but it is. The people who created the comics way back when, and then the people who worked on the shows at various points have really filled out that family tree. Like, you could go on ancestry.com and look up the Duck family tree. Pretty much, it's that detailed. But it's about Donald's family. It's about Scrooge McDuck taking care of Donald's nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And they get into all kinds of hijinks because Scrooge is not just the richest duck in the world. He's also kind of like a retired Indiana Jones character, where he's got all kinds of things that shouldn't be in his house, but should be in a museum or destroyed or both. And Huey, Dewey, and Louie are constantly getting into it with him. In particular, there was a full-length feature film that they released called DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp, which, if you Google that right now and look at the movie poster for it, straight up looks like an Indiana Jones movie poster. They did that on purpose. And it's a great movie about, at the beginning, Scrooge and the triplets and their friend Webby are on an adventure in a tomb on a dungeon delve, looking for this treasure, and they find this lamp by accident, and it accidentally happens to have a genie in it, and all sorts of hijinks ensue. It's a great movie. It is longer than you remember it being, if you remember it being anything. Because every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I love this movie so much. And then like halfway through, I'm like, dang, we still have like a lot to go. This is a long movie. It's great though. It's very quotable. It's one of the reasons I knew I was going to be able to marry my husband, is that the two movies that we can quote at each other consistently are DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp and Muppet Treasure Island. That was that litmus test right there. But anyway, so DuckTales is great. And the new DuckTales, which just started very recently, like in the last year, has an amazing team behind it. They upheld the integrity of the original by keeping the same theme song and just updating like the tempo and the singer, which is very important, as anyone who knows that song knows. Like I was saying, with a group of people in a certain age bracket, you could poke your head into a room at a party and go DuckTales, and everyone would go woo, you know. It's one of those things. The new DuckTales has an amazing cast. When they released a video when they were coming back, with the new cast of the new DuckTales singing the DuckTales theme, and it like exploded on the internet one day, because I knew that they were bringing DuckTales back, but I wasn't thrilled about it because DuckTales is so good, and I didn't want it to be like weird and modern now. As we all crotchety old fans of things do. We're like, meh. I mean, I'm glad they're bringing it back, but I'm not glad. I don't know. Meh. But then they released this video of the new cast singing the DuckTales theme, which I'm a sucker for anybody who doesn't take something seriously enough to like sing its own theme song or to like make fun of themselves being in it. I love that. And the cast is outrageous. David Tennant is Scrooge McDuck. I had no idea. I felt very attacked by this video. It was a culmination of a lot of things for me emotionally. The triplets are played by Danny Putty from Community, Bobby Moynihan from SNL, and Ben Schwartz from Parks and Rec. It is the perfect cast. I don't know how they did it. Like, it's so good. And the update that they've done on it is absolutely delightful. Every episode is a brilliant combination of hilarious dialogue, you know, with that modern witty banter that we're all kind of used to now in our media, But it all has the same like heartwarming emotions that the original did, even more so in some ways. They really play into this wild family tree of the Duck family. Donald is involved a lot more now, which is cool because the triplets aren't his kids, they're his sister's kids. And what happened to his sister? And it comes out that his sister Della was also an explorer and she went missing. And the triplets start to uncover clues as they're hanging out at Scrooge's house about what happened to her and where she went and why no one talks about it. And it's all really, really beautifully handled because, you know, everyone's family has something that they kind of don't talk about. And everybody's family has weird quirks and frustrations. And the triplets are also delightfully fleshed out, well-rounded individuals in the new series. In the original series, they were all voiced by the same voice actor and they had the same qualities all the time, except for the fact that one of them wore red, one wore green, and one wore blue. But now we have these amazing individual characters. Like Huey is the red one. Huey is really by the book. He's a junior woodchuck scout, and he only does things if he knows exactly how the outcome will be. And he plans things down to like the second, you know, he's very, very in control of everything. Dewey is the cool kid. He respects authority, but he's not like bowing and scraping to it. He knows he's got good hair. He can go anywhere and talk to anybody and come out on top. He's very hip to what's good in the moment. And like, he's got ambitions to become Scrooge's like heir, basically. Because he thinks he's the coolest one and he's the most deserving. And then Louis is the evil one, I guess. Like Louis, he's there's so many words we could describe Louis with. Louis is the lazy one who likes food, but those are not his only defining qualities. At first glance, you're like, oh, okay, Louis is the kind of lazy one. He doesn't like to get up to go get another soda. He'll like use a robot arm to grab it for him across the room before he would rather get up. But that's not really all that Louis is about. Louis is also very, very smart and like extremely manipulative. And I don't think any of the triplets are really good or evil. And I think that's part of what makes them really delightful and relatable and awesome. And then there's Webby. So Webby is the granddaughter of Scrooge McDuck's quote unquote housekeeper, Mrs. Beakley. In the original, Mrs. Beakley was like, "Oh, Mr. McDuck," you know, and in the new one, Beakley is like, "Mr. McDuck, the security has been breached again. Do you want me to redo it?" And you know, like she's like, it's pretty clear from the get-go that she is not a housekeeper. She's definitely former Black Ops in some capacity. And I love her. I adore her. And Webby, her granddaughter, is bananas. She is the hyper one. She's obsessed with the McDuck family. She wants to know what happened to Della Duck. She wants to know everything about Donald. They're famous to her. And she loves spending time with the triplets because she's never had any friends. Basically, she's got like a princess in a tower kind of situation where her grandmother keeps her under lock and key. And she's, of course, highly trained in like karate and Krav Maga and like espionage, but she's also like really socially awkward. So she's eager to become friends with people when she doesn't know them, but she's also eager to go on adventures and disarm traps. Basically, what I'm saying is the new Ducktales is like a heartwarming family story about a D&D campaign. And
that's a great
they're
description.
ducks. They're all ducks. Like that's really what it comes down to. Oh, and there's Launchpad. I can't believe I forgot Launchpad. Launchpad is the chauffeur for Scrooge McDuck, but he's not good at it. And that stands true in the original as well as the update. He is not bright. He is not trained. He has no license. He crashes everything. And he is always happy. Like he's always happy. And he's a pure good soul and needs to be protected at all costs. Launchpad is wonderful. I'm very passionate about DuckTales because not in no small part because there is a podcast on the One Shot Podcast Network called Adventure, and in it, host Pranks Paul leads a different cast of performers and players through different game systems. But the game setting for each of the systems that they use is like a heavily modded fanfic version of something. So I think their first couple of episodes were Pokemon, and I want to say, oh gosh, I don't remember if it was it wasn't Fate because we used Fate when we did ours. I don't remember what it was, but they did a Pokemon game, and everyone does a smashing job impersonating those voice actors, which is delightful. And Drew and I and our friend JR and the amazing Cat Cool were on Adventure a little while ago, sometime last year, doing a DuckTales episode. And I cannot recommend it enough because not only did we try to make this game last as long as possible because we were having so much fun, but we also do a pretty good job imitating the new cast of voice actors. And then on top of that, we've all been keeping up with the current season of the show, and we basically wrote an episode. It's not even fanfic anymore. Like, it's basically an episode of the show, down to like the traps that we used in the dungeon and why we were going and who gets the treasure at the end. It's insane. It's insane. We watched this new season and we were all like, should we call them? Should we talk to them about this? Like, what do we do? So I definitely recommend checking that out. And Adventure's a really cool show too, because he goes through lots of different fandoms. They do a Scooby-Doo episode. There's a Magic School Bus episode that's out of this world. Literally, it's so funny. They do Ninja Turtles, Pokemon, like I said, Harry Potter, all sorts of stuff. It's a really fun project. And it's very interesting to see what happens. But yeah, DuckTales, woo. It's
DuckTales, woo.
It's such a jam. Like, I can't. And they've acknowledged in the new series that Darkwing Duck, like from the 80s, 90s, is like ye old videos that they have lying around. So like there's an episode where the kids are all buckled into a plane while they're flying somewhere, and they've got a Darkwing Duck tape in the VCR, but it keeps skipping and going back to the top of the episode. So like they've been stuck watching the same episode of Darkwing Duck for like hours while they're flying to their location, and it's very it's a funny in joke in the world that that Darkwing Duck is a thing, or was a thing, and may yet be a thing again. And then, of course, in the background, you've got other delightful side characters and voice actors. Lin-Manuel Miranda of, everything fame, I guess, Hamilton and Broadway and stuff and geniusness, plays Gizmo Duck, which is a fantastic choice. And Gizmo Duck does inventions and stuff for Scrooge and R&D. It's just a delightful show, and the animation is great, and it's very funny and very smart, and the messages are good, and family and ducks and adventure, and they'd make a great D&D party. They just would. I mean, Donald is a barbarian.
Yeah, that works. That does check the box right there.
Yeah, he gets mad and he can't stop being mad until he punches something. Like that's how barbarian work.
I know one of the things that my wife and I did when we had our kids, we were like, we're going to see those crap movies and the terrible TV shows at some point, which we have. And I hate having to take them sometimes to the movies, but I got them hooked on the original DuckTales when I was like, oh, hey, we should watch this. And we watched it on Amazon Prime. And they're still asking to watch the rest of the series. We've made it through the first 2 seasons. We made it through, and they're still asking about it. And it's like, well, we haven't had time to really like buy the next thing digitally, but we will, guys. But yeah, they dug it.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, who is your favorite DuckTales character? Because I have to know.
My favorite DuckTales character? Okay, so like I told you I love Mrs. Beakley now. I love the new Beakley. She's so great. And she's so done with everybody's garbage. She's so done. Um, but honestly, like Dewey Duck is the greatest of the triplets. I mean, how can you not love Scrooge? Scrooge McDuck is the best. In the original, he was always very, very grumpy and crotchety, and he is too in the current one. But David Tennant brings this like kind of wistful, like, oh, in my day, we did this and that and the other adventures, this kind of like pride in what he's done. He plays up the greed, but it's more about pride, I think, now than it is about greed, and that's really, really interesting. And he's a lot of fun too. But honestly, Dewey Duck is the greatest of the ducks of the Duck family. Dewey for president.
Yeah, I always loved because I haven't seen. I think I've watched one episode, the first episode of the new DuckTales, and that has been my viewing experience with it. But I always loved not Donald. I always loved Scrooge McDuck as a character because on the one hand, you have like he's rich, he doesn't have to do anything, but on the other hand, here he is risking his life for random adventures.
Yeah, he's like Scrooge doesn't really have fear, I think. I mean, I guess he's afraid of some things like being found out to have emotions or like, losing what he's accomplished or losing what he's gained. But he's, as far as like danger stuff, he's like, whatever. Like, let's do this, which is really cool. And I think especially in the new series, he's got such a way about him where at first you're like, oh, he hates his family, that's why he doesn't want them to stay. But it's not that. He loves his family. He loves his family a lot. He just has regrets about his past that he doesn't want them to be a part of, which is complex and like human and wonderful and really interesting storytelling,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, for people like our time of people with the Disney shows growing up, Tailspin and Rescue Rangers and DuckTales, I know one of the things that people have been turned off about is like that animation style. They're like, that's not how I remember it. What would you say to those people? Like, just give it a chance, lean into it.
Yeah, honestly, because when I saw the art, I was kind of like, oh, it's got an interesting quality to it, and I don't want to sound like one of those people, but I appreciate that it's primarily well, it doesn't look 3D, I guess I should say, because I don't know that it's hand drawn. I imagine a lot of it is digitally rendered. But it has a quality about it that makes it not look forced and 3D,
Right.
And I will say that if you give it a chance, you'll note that it feels like a comic book. The way they draw the new show has angles and lines and depth in ways that comics have had those qualities. And I find it really, really effective for what they're doing with the new show. And I don't think it detracts from the old show, and I don't think it replaces the old show. And I definitely don't think this is a situation where it's like, well, the old show was better, but the new show's good. Or the new show is way better, the old show doesn't exist anymore. I don't think either of those is true in this case. I think this is a prime example of a great creative move to increase and expand an existing IP. Like, I just think they made all good choices with this new show. And even if the art style doesn't look quite right to you, that a few episodes in, you'll have adjusted and you'll see what cool stuff they're doing with it.
Absolutely. And I know that's one of the things that I've had, even like my own personal experience of watching different shows, different animated shows is, it sometimes it just takes a while for the art to click with me, but as long as that story is good,
yeah,
then I'm golden and I'll be fine with the art.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if it was up to you and you had to dive back into the remaining trio of shows, Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, which would be next on your list to like go ahead and bring it back for this current generation?
Oh, I mean, people got lots of feelings about Darkwing Duck, but like the way that the new Ducktales is going, they've made it very clear that because Darkwing Duck and Tailspin exist in the same universe, that they're like they're like present. It's just not been addressed quite yet.
Mhm.
So I imagine that I'm pretty sure that Tailspin is going to come into play at some point. I don't know if it's going to get its own show, but it will be a part of it. I'm not sure if they're going to bring back Darkwing Duck, but like, you know, I'm not going to complain if they do. Like Darkwing Duck rules.
Mhm.
I'm the terror that flaps in the night. Yes, bring it back. We need it, you know? That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. I know personally, like I love DuckTales, but I was more of a Darkwing Duck person just based on that character and my love of comics at the time. And
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it's just so crazy. And then of course having a Launchpad crossover onto that show too
Oh,
was
which is great. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Cuz Launchpad is good. Like I also this reminds me being Florida residents. Are you aware that right now at Animal Kingdom Donald is having a dinosaur party because birds are related to dinosaurs. And at this dinosaur party you can meet Launchpad and Scrooge.
I did not know that. The only time we used to have annual passes recently, but with the kids it's more expensive. But when my wife and I got married, we were here in 2000. We lived here from like 2006 to 2008 or so. And we have pictures of us with Launchpad McQuack because he
Oh,
used to be one of those characters that you
yeah.
could find
Yeah.
on occasion, like not all the time, but you'd be like, "Oh, look, there's Launchpad."
Yeah.
But I did not know that they had a Scrooge.
Yeah, so they started it, I think, over the summer. It's like Donald's Dino Bash, and it's at Animal Kingdom and Dinoland USA because they needed to put something there. And there's so Chip and Dale are there dressed like dinosaurs, and like Donald is there in like a little safari outfit, and you can go and meet Scrooge McDuck and Launchpad. And I, first of all, thank Disney for finding an excuse to put Launchpad and Scrooge back in the park. Um, we'll put a dinosaur. I don't know, dinosaur party. Yeah, well, birds are related to dinosaurs. That makes sense, right? Yeah, let's do it. Send it to print. And I'm also cursing myself because it's been around for a couple of months now, and I still haven't been over there. I haven't been to Animal Kingdom in a while. We have annual passes right now, and we're trying to get the most out of them because we won't be able to afford them again. You know, like this is
Hmm.
kind of it. Um, but I need to get over there because it's very important to meet Scrooge and Launchpad while they're there.
Exactly. Like that was, and to admit something here, we've been to Animal Kingdom. I don't know how many times, but we've never gone to Dino Land USA ever. Not once have we set foot in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's there. It's a thing that exists. Some people go to it. I mean, I would say we usually pass through it pretty quickly because I like to ride Dinosaur, the ride. Um, Drew doesn't love it, but he does it because I do. Um, but then we kind of like run out again because the rest of Dinoland USA is kind of furniture, you know, like
Mm,
it's there. It's it's not even sure what it's doing there. You know what I mean? Um,
right, exactly.
and that's not to say that dinosaurs don't belong in Animal Kingdom. I think they certainly do. I just that whole area needs a little help, needs a little nudge because it doesn't really know what it's doing. Um, but the rest of Animal Kingdom is absolutely awesome. I don't know. I don't understand people who skip Animal Kingdom when they come down. It's like maybe 10 years ago it was skippable, but now no, you have to go to Animal Kingdom. Great
Hmm.
food, wide open pathways. You're not shoulder to shoulder with everybody the whole time. Beautiful views, great shows. Like you gotta go to Animal Kingdom. It's so good.
Absolutely, especially like my wife loves the Lion King show.
Yeah.
And I personally, I remember when the Finding Nemo show came out, and I was like, "What?" I was blown away. I'm like, "Wait a minute! Like this is something that you would see in like Broadway or traveling around, and you'd pay money just to go see that show. And I'm getting to see like a smaller, shortened
Yeah,
type show for that.
absolutely. As performers, we know a handful of people who do work at the Finding Nemo show, and that's a cool gig. It's such a cool show, and it's really, really beautifully done. But people just like kind of don't know, that everybody, they save up on their vacation, they come down here, they go to Magic Kingdom, and then maybe the adults are like, well, we're going to go to Epcot and drink around the world. And then
Right.
everything else is just sort of like, meh, well, we could go, or we could go back to Magic Kingdom again, And I guess that makes sense. Population density of Magic Kingdom is pretty severe compared to some of the other parks. Like as far as like square footage and how many rides are there, that you get more for your money going to Magic Kingdom, which is why it costs more to go to Magic Kingdom. But Animal Kingdom is so great. I love Animal Kingdom. And my favorite restaurant in Orlando is at the Animal Kingdom Lodge, the resort hotel nearby. Sanaa. It is African Indian fusion food. And even if you don't like either of those things, you have to go because everything on the menu is good. And as you dine in it, you are surrounded by glass windows looking out into the big courtyard at the Animal Kingdom lodge. And there are giraffes and, gnu and ostriches and longhorn cattle and like crazy birds that like just walk around in the courtyard at this resort while you're dining. It's amazing. It is delicious food, the likes of which you will never have again anywhere else in the world, except for maybe India and or Africa.
Exactly. Like we had the chance to stay at the Animal Kingdom Lodge one night, and that was super awesome. Not only that, like to just wake up and be like, oh, let's look out on our patio and see what animals we see. But I don't think we've eaten at Sanaa. We've been to Boma a couple
Boma's
times
good.
for their breakfast buffet.
Yeah, of course.
And then my wife and I went to Jico a long time ago, but haven't been back to that one.
Yeah, you got to go to Sanaa. Sanaa is everything.
I'll have to put it on my list.
When we moved in last November, we moved in. We got everything out of the truck into the apartment, and I got a text from my friend who was in town, and she was like, "Hey, my buddy works at Disney. Do you want to come to Animal Kingdom with us tomorrow?" And we were like, "Oh, we'd love to, but like." We just moved and we don't have money. She goes, no. He works at Disney. He can get 4 of us into the park for free. And we were like, oh, yes, we will go to Animal Kingdom with you tomorrow. And so the day after we moved in, we went to Animal Kingdom, which was like a total dream. And they took us to lunch at Sanaa. And I'm not kidding. Like Drew and I started crying because the food was so good. Like, and after all of the work of moving in and driving across the country and everything, and like this delicious meal was waiting for us at Sanaa the whole time. It was so good. So now we take everyone there. Every time people come down there, we're like, great, clear your schedule because we're going to Sanaa and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But we have to go to Sanaa. Like that's vital. Like we make those reservations like way in advance as soon as we know someone's coming down because it's so good and it's just so worth it.
Absolutely. Now, while we're talking about stuff of the Disney variety, one of the other things that you had want to talk about as far as like shows go is the Tangled series that's out on Disney.
They're just doing such good work with the cartoons right now. And that's not to say that the movies aren't doing well. The movies are fine. But it's just really exciting to have. It was really exciting for me and Drew to see that they were going to cycle back to Tangled because we have this ongoing, I don't want to call it a joke because it's not funny. It's just sad. We have an ongoing bit about how Tangled is like the good-looking, well-educated, multiple degree older sister of Frozen. And Frozen is like 18, about to graduate high school, and everybody's like, Frozen, you're so pretty. Frozen, you should be a model. You should quit school and become a model in LA. Oh, Frozen, you're so talented. Sing that song again. You know that song that everybody loves? Sing that song again, Frozen. Frozen. Frozen, come to our party, Frozen. And Tangled comes home from college with like multiple degrees and she's like, "Hey, I sing songs. I sing too. People like my songs." And they're like, "Yeah, welcome home, Tangled." Frozen. We don't want to go to karaoke. We just want to hear you sing. And Tangled's like, I could go to karaoke. I sing. Mandy Moore was in me, and Zachary Levi, and my songs are very good. Doesn't anyone remember my songs? And everyone's like, "No, I really don't." And she's like, "Well, what about the one with the lanterns?" And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that moment's so cute. That's actually like a really good moment." Frozen, do you remember that moment in Tangled? And Frozen's like, "Yeah, I do. It was like really inspiring for me, which is why my movie is full of color and light and the warmth of sisterhood." And Tangled's like, "That's not what? What are you talking about? What is going on? I have multiple degrees. I am an accomplished performer and a doctor and an artist, and I can do everything. What happened to everybody while I was gone?" And everyone's just like, "Frozen, sing the song, Frozen, Frozen." They're just brainwashed zombies at that point. So it was really nice to see that Disney was like, "We're going to release Tangled the series," because we were like, cool, that's like a good idea because Tangled is awesome. Tangled gets no promo anymore because Frozen took over everything and brainwashed the youth of America. And Tangled, Frozen has a live sing-along at Hollywood Studios and a ride at Epcot, and has taken over the entire Norway Pavilion at Epcot. And Tangled only has a bathroom in the Magic Kingdom. Tangled has a bathroom in the Magic Kingdom. Now, it is the greatest bathroom they've ever built. It's adorable, and it's built like a little Renaissance fair town square, and you can see her tower in the distance. But like, this movie is so good. Why are we sleeping on this? Why? I don't get it.
Exactly.
So we were thrilled that they were like, "We're going to bring a series." We were like, cool, great. This better be good. And listeners, it is so good. It is a great show. We love this show. It is delightfully animated in a kind of, I don't know, folksy, like picture book type style. There's like an angular quality to the art, but it also feels like a picture book. Like the texture of the drawing feels like a picture book to me. Heavily inspired and worked on by Claire Keane, daughter of Glenn Keane, Disney legend. And her style is just so, like, it's breathtaking. It really is. It's folksy and it's romantic and it's also fresh somehow and new. It's voiced by the same voice cast. So Zachary Levi is Flynn Rider and Mandy Moore is Rapunzel. There are new songs, not every episode, but like every couple of episodes, there'll be a song and dance number. And Alan Menken does the songs, which is great. And the series, so at the end of Tangled, spoilers, they get married. Flynn and Rapunzel get married. But in the narration, the voiceover narration, he says, "I asked her to marry me," and she said no. And I kept asking until she said yes. And so it's implied that a lot of time has gone by between him asking her for the first time, the end of Tangled, and them actually getting married. And so it's delightful because Tangled the series takes place between Rapunzel returning to the kingdom of Corona and presumably them eventually getting married. And that's a great way to do it because no one wants to watch a show about Rapunzel being stuck in a tower and emotionally abused by a witch for 18 years. No one wants that. Although baby Rapunzel and like baby Pascal would be really cute together. And we do see that occasionally in flashback. But it's a great opportunity for adventure and learning and lessons and all sorts of good messages. Because Rapunzel, kind of like how I was talking about how Webby in Ducktales has like Princess in a Tower syndrome, where she's been kept kind of under close watch and doesn't have a lot of social graces, but she means really well, and she's also smart and capable in other ways. Similar situation with Rapunzel. Because she had nothing but time in the tower, she can do a lot of things. She can paint, she can draw, she can sculpt, she can build, she can mend, she can sew, she can play chess, she can dance, she can cook, she can clean, she can do all of these things, right? And she loves doing all of these different things. She's a Renaissance woman. She has multiple interests and multiple skills. But she gets to the kingdom and she suddenly is like put into this dress, and she has to wear shoes, and she has to know where to be at any given moment. She has to know everyone's name. She has to know who to curtsy to and who not to curtsy to. And it's a totally different world for her. And the expectations are very high because she's been gone for such a long time. And now she's, 18 or 19 or whatever. And she's supposed to just sort of slide effortlessly into the role she was meant to play. But then she's like, is this the role I was meant to play? I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel like I belong here. And it's fascinating because all she wants after returning to Corona and, freeing herself from Mother Gothel, all she wants is to go out into the world and see the world that she's never been able to see. It's not just about coming home and finding her family for her. It's also about living a life that's like worth living to her. And on the other end of that, Eugene, has spent his whole life running from authority and, dreaming about a day when he won't have to worry about money or food or shelter or whatever. And he's finally got it because he and Rapunzel are together. They live in the palace. There's food. There's good clothes. He can do whatever he wants. He can go wherever he wants. He's got it, and he loves her. He loves her so much, and he has what he wants, and he sees it as they have what they always wanted. But what comes out very quickly at the beginning of the series is that Rapunzel's like, but that's not what I want. I just left a tower to come to another tower, and now I'm stuck here.
Mm-hmm.
And Eugene doesn't see it that way. And he's like, but you have no idea what it's like out there. It's awful out there. People are mean. There's crime. I know, because I did a lot of it. It's a bad place, and we have it so easy here. And it's so good to be in a good place with you because I love you. And I want to marry you and settle down. And she's like, I don't want to settle down. I haven't been anywhere to settle down from. And so they have this whole, like, this complication to their relationship, which is so great to see characters have growth and complication and different layers. It's so refreshing. And it's also about her learning to, like, get on with her parents, because her dad feels terrible that he let her get kidnapped as a baby. And so he's got that riding on him. And, her mother also feels bad about that, but like is trying to help Rapunzel navigate that conversation with her dad because her dad wants to keep her safe. That's like his main directive, even though she's like a grown person and she should be able to take care of herself now. He's like, I can't let you go again. I can't do that. And she's like, but you kind of have to, because like I'm a person and I need to like explore the world and live my life. And then we also have Pascal, the chameleon, and we have Maximus, the horse, both of whom are too smart for their own good. And then we've got a delightful addition to the main cast is Cassandra, who is Rapunzel's quote unquote lady in waiting. But she's Rapunzel's only friend, really, other than the animals and Eugene. And Cass is fascinating because not only is she Rapunzel's begrudging lady in waiting, she's also the adopted daughter of the captain of the guard. So she is underneath the dress that she wears for her lady in waiting duties. She has boots and a sword and a dagger and leggings so that she can tear the dress off and go leap into action at any moment because she's determined to become captain of the guard someday. And she rules. She's voiced by Broadway star Eden Espinosa, who I love. She is the perfect foil for Rapunzel. Rapunzel is such a Hufflepuff. Like, she loves everyone unconditionally. She doesn't understand it when people don't get along, and she tries to fix it, even though like that's not how life works. Like, sometimes people just don't get along, and you have to be okay with that. So she has this wonderful naivete about her, and she's so warm and genuine and loving. And Cass is kind of hardened by life. She's not mean, but she is a little bit cynical. But what's amazing is that she, at all costs, she loves Rapunzel. She would do anything to protect her and to help her, even when they're mad at each other. Like, there are a lot of episodes where the two of them disagree on something and they argue, and Cass brings out Rapunzel's angry side, which she didn't know she had, you know? And so Rapunzel goes through all of this wonderful transformation and growth. And Cass, in turn, learns to be more gentle with people and to allow herself to feel things when she needs to, and things like that. But gosh, I can't even tell you. It's such a great show as far as like learning to communicate between other people. It's a great show about how to be a person around other people, especially if you don't know them or you don't understand them, and how to love them anyway. It's a great show because Rapunzel is dealing, for most of the first season, she's dealing with PTSD from Mother Gothel. So she like has flashbacks sometimes and she has nightmares that Mother Gothel's going to come back for her, and she has to go back into the tower and she'll lose everything. So they deal with that. There's a lot about, she and Eugene have true love, but true love isn't easy, and it's not automatic. It's complicated, and they have to learn how to navigate that together, which is wonderful to see in a children's show. You know, all of these complex concepts about feelings and being a person and how to be a good person, and on top of that, they have all these wild adventures where the main overarching plot is that these black rocks, these black spiky stones, have started cropping up all over the kingdom of Corona, and if you touch them, you get hurt. In like people are getting hurt, people are dying. It's taking over the land, and it's making life very difficult for people, especially like out on farms and stuff. And Rapunzel finds out that they're happening, so she goes to investigate with Cass, and she touches the rock, and her hair grows back. So she now has her long golden magical hair again, and she doesn't know why. And so the major overarching plot of the series is about her and Cass and Eugene trying to figure out what the rocks are, where they came from, why they're here, and what it has to do with her, like what her ultimate destiny with that is. I can't say enough good things about it. It's such a great show, and it's so full of like funny stuff and joy and like reasonable complications of the characters' personalities, and they go through so many things together, and they still continue to have problems, and they still continue to work through things, but they come out stronger for it every time, and that's really a good show. You know, that's a good message.
Absolutely. It's one of those shows where you want to keep watching it just to see what they tackle next, what comes up next, how are they going to deal with the situations that they have. And it sounds like between, with Ducktales and with Tangled, it sounds like we're like Disney's getting back into just having really strong animated shows again with solid writing, instead of just tossing something on the screen and being like, okay, you guys can have this.
Right. And I know that at least I've been told there's a lot of shows that Disney's been putting out for much, much younger audiences. Like Jake and the Neverland Pirates is supposed to be pretty good and pretty fun. And Sophia the First has a lot of good stuff about it. And Elena of Avalor too has been very, very popular. And of course it's directed towards a younger set, which is also good. The younger set needs good messages and good animation stuff too. But it's very exciting because Tangled and Ducktales are both things that older folks will have references for, but also like the show is obviously meant for kids, but it's wicked intelligent. They're both so smart and so relevant and so important, that really anybody could watch it and get something out of it. It's not like an older person is going to watch it and go, well, this is slow, or wow, I could see that coming a mile away, this is boring. There's lots of good twists and good storytelling devices that they utilize to make sure that it's engaging for everybody, which is really great.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I think a lot, that's been cropping up with good kids stuff recently, is you're making it entertaining for the kid, but you're also putting the stuff in there for the adults that are watching it, being like, you're not stupid, and we're not making a stupid show. We're making a show where everyone can benefit and everyone can enjoy it, and there's things in there for you too.
Definitely.
Which I love, because yes, I have watched Jake and the Neverland Pirates. I have watched Sophia. I do enjoy them when my kids were watching them back in the day. Is like, those are good. Like, I enjoyed watching them. I had no problem sitting down and watching those shows because it kept my interest, and I was like, oh, this is an interesting take on what they're doing, and especially like when they had like Peter Pan show back up for some episodes. It's like, okay, cool. I'm down with it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Exactly. Another thing that we haven't tackled, since we'll switch off of Disney now, kinda, I guess, maybe, because I don't know if it's Disney property. Jane Austen is something that you love, and I have no knowledge about, except for that I know the name Jane Austen and I know some of her works, and that's it.
Yeah. So I don't even know how it started. I think I was probably in high school when I saw Pride and Prejudice for the first time. The 1995 BBC miniseries Pride and Prejudice, featuring Jennifer Aly and Colin Firth, which some would consider to be like the definitive Pride and Prejudice. I don't know. I think that I was probably around that age when I saw it for the first time, and I fell hard for it, and then I started reading the books. I don't really know where to even start. Jane Austen is a prolific writer, an English writer, and she is considered to sort of like capture the feel of her time. And I don't know if that's true because I haven't read a whole lot of other things from her time period, but she certainly made a huge impact on English literature, and is notably a woman. So of course my interest was piqued there because I love the idea of Jane growing up in that house filled with, her sisters and her parents and everyone worrying about money all the time, and her going, yeah, whatever, I don't need to get married, I'm gonna write instead. Which of course is romanticized in the film Becoming Jane. But I like don't know where to start with this, except that she wrote a bunch of books, several of which were published, some of which were not finished and did not really get published, although like the texts that she has done have been released since. The big ones are Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Persuasion, Northanger Abbey. Oh gosh, Emma. I feel like there's one more. Is there one more?
Dun dun dun.
Mansfield Park. That's the other one. Yeah. Yeah, Mansfield Park was the other one. And these books are set contemporary to her time, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it's all about life in England at the time, in the middle and upper or lower and middle classes. So the protagonists of her stories generally don't have a lot of money to start with, but by the end of the book, they tend to end up with a bunch of money because of who they've married, because that is inextricably the situation for women at that time. And the books are filled with witty people and stupid people, and the witty people talking circles around the stupid people. and feeling good about themselves for doing it. The books are filled with family struggle and conflicting personalities under one roof, and people's families saying embarrassing things about them in public and then them dealing with that for like years afterward. There's stories about social commentary and romance and good people getting good things at the end and bad people getting bad things at the end. Those are kind of the pillars of her style. The one everybody knows pretty much as a reference is Pride and Prejudice, of course. And in it, the Bennet family has a bunch of daughters and none of them are married. And it starts with a very wealthy gentleman moving into a big manor house like a mile away. And the mother of the family being like, okay, somebody's got to marry him. And just how ridiculous, especially to a modern audience. We're like, what can you imagine? What a strange way to live, but that's the reality. And yes, Jane is ramping it up for comedic effect, I think, and she's exaggerating some things, but for the most part, that's how it was. And there's something that I think still captures the imagination of a modern audience, especially a modern American audience, about Jane Austen's work, is because and this goes into a lot of what I like about history in general, especially the concept of Americans being Anglophiles and being kind of obsessed with British literature and British history and all that. We as Americans don't consider ourselves to have a class system. We absolutely do, but we don't see that about ourselves most of the time. I think recent political events are causing us to reevaluate that and become more aware of that. But for the most part, we've gone on for, the couple hundred years we've been around and blissfully unaware of our own class system. And so we look at things like Jane Austen, where their place in life is determined by how much money their parents had, and how much money the person they're going to marry has. And those are the two steps. If you come into this world in a wealthy family, you're doing fine. And it really doesn't matter what happens to you from there. But if you come into the world from a poor family, you got to marry up, because if you don't, your kids are going to be screwed, and then you don't have anything to show for it. And I think we as modern Americans, we look back at that and we find that incredibly bizarre and very romantic. I don't know exactly psychologically why, because it sounds miserable if you really think about it. Like living that way sounds awful. I don't want to be a part of that. But we love pretending to be a part of it. And we love reading it and seeing it on TV and in the movies and in plays. And we love fantasizing about it. We have a collective obsession with, like the working class and the service class. So people whose entire family lineage was in service as butlers and maids and housekeepers and cooks and valets and groomsmen to wealthier people. And that's just how things were. And that changed in the 19-teens, 1920s, 1930s when that hierarchy, especially in England, started to fade away thanks World War I. But that's like why we love Downton Abbey. It's a totally different time period from Jane Austen, but the concepts are still there. And they're struggling the upper classes are struggling to hold on to that in Downton Abbey, while the lower classes are realizing that there are other opportunities out there for them than to just stay in service. But they also want to stay in service because that's a good life for them. They're fed and they're paid for and all of that stuff. But, what if there was something else for them other than being in service or being a farmer? And then that's where we sort of come into the modern era with not having that class system. Or we think we don't, but we definitely still do. It's just totally different looking. So I think Jane Austen is kind of one of those big milestones in literature of that kind of set of concepts that we find very romantic. We find it super romantic that Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist of Pride and Prejudice, she's one of, several sisters, all of whom have various flaws and positive features. And Lizzie is known for being very smart and for being a wit, which was valued then, at least by some people. Even though their family doesn't have any money, she's very smart and she's, fairly good looking, which, is also a bonus. But she doesn't, we love her as a modern audience because she doesn't buy into the bullshit at all. She's like, I don't want to go dress up so that people can look at me and decide if they want to dance with me. I will go because I want to talk to people, because I enjoy talking to people, but I'm not going to go and like let you have a silent bidding war for my marriage rights. That's stupid. And her family's like, what do you mean it's stupid? Like, that's how it works. What are you talking about? But Lizzie doesn't buy it. She's a little ahead of her time. And she kind of just does her own thing and says what she wants and says what she means and like has a good time. And then of course Darcy shows up and he's super hot, but he's a dick, and she immediately hates him because he said something mean about her at a party. And that's how that works. But we also, on a different tangent here, on a parallel tangent, we as a culture, we love it when people fall in love after hating each other. And I think a lot of that comes from Pride and Prejudice. It's also notably found in Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. We love that. We love Beatrice and Benedict because they hate each other. They want each other to die in a fire. And then, out of nowhere, seemingly, thanks to rumor and shenanigans, they are convinced that the other one is in love with them, and they immediately are like, "Oh, I can't turn her down. I can't turn him down. He's so good and handsome and precious, and oh, I definitely love him now." Like easily. And in Pride and Prejudice, it's a similar concept where they absolutely they can't stand each other, and they keep meeting, they keep crossing paths, and as things happen, it becomes clear that they are trying to communicate different things to each other, and they keep not doing it effectively, which causes comedic hijinks and romantic frustration. And they, by and by, they start to have an attraction, and then Darcy proposes to her, but he proposes by basically telling her family sucks and she should be ashamed of them, which is not how you propose to someone. But like, we love that. We love that as a modern audience, that blunder. We love it. Which is why there have been so many reinterpretations of Pride and Prejudice on stage and on screen, and reinterpretations in literature, because people love it so much. The things that Jane Austen kind of crystallized in her stories about society and about romance and about marriage and love and family and comedy, honestly, and tragedy too, because bad things happen sometimes and it makes people sad and they have to like overcome it. Those things cling to our brains as a culture, as a literary culture, and we go back to it over and over and over again. That's why we have so many sequel rewrites for Peter Pan. That's why we keep making movies about Alice in Wonderland. That's why The Wizard of Oz won't let us go to sleep at night, because we keep going back to these stories that we latch onto for certain things. They've become kind of like a modern mythology, and I think Jane Austen is a part of that too. That her work laid the foundations for so many other commentaries and so many other story opportunities that it's uncountable. And I wonder if she really understood the magnitude of what she was doing, or if she was just dicking around and having a good time, or if she even at the end of her life, when she had seen, some success with her books, like if she had any concept of the success that she would have, posthumously. I just think it's incredibly impressive.
It's something where, like, I've never read the books. I don't think I've even seen any of the movies or adaptations or anything. The only one that caught my attention was like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and I still never did anything with that one.
Oh yeah. Let me talk about that really quick. So like I said, we keep going back to these things, especially when they've hit public domain, and we like rewrite them and we reimagine them and whatever. I'm guilty of that too. My novel is a retelling of The Tempest. So like I'm not not dumping on that. Like it's a good thing that we do. We just it's an interesting phenomenon. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is really interesting because it is a delightful, articulate, eloquent roasting of Jane Austen's style while still holding the integrity of the story that she wrote, which is wild because usually people will like write something in the style of someone else to make fun of them, and then that's kind of it. They hit the zing and then they're like, all right, cool. But he wrote this book exactly the way she would have written it if it had actually been about zombies. And it's mind-bending how good it is. I haven't seen the film Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I just haven't gotten around to it. But I read the book in college and it is fantastic. I laughed out loud, which is a feat in and of itself. And this is wild, but like the action sequences are delightful. It is extra good and funny and smart if you know Pride and Prejudice at all. If you know Pride and Prejudice really well, it is a masterpiece. That's the only way I can describe it, because the alterations he's made are exactly right and like in the right places and for the right characters, and like even down to like who dies of what zombie bite at what point in the story. You're like, yep, of course she did. Yep, that makes sense. That's so her, you know. And there's some magnificent plot twists that add up to a really hilarious, fun zombie roast of Jane Austen's book. I read it because I was worried it was going to be terrible and I wanted to know how terrible it would be. I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from someone and I ended up loving it. It's hilarious. I heard the movie was okay, but I gotta say, like, if you read Pride and Prejudice, the book, to get a sense of like how it's written, because it's its own kind of timbre and rhythm and language, and then you read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, it is a masterpiece. It's so good.
I might have to check it out. I might have to explore this literature that I have yet to dive into and just see, because I know, like, I have lots of friends that read the books or they've watched the shows, and I've just never seen them. I've never made time to do something maybe outside of my wheelhouse, but definitely something I need to look into.
Well, yeah, and I definitely recommend a lot of the television and film adaptations of Jane Austen are very, very good. PBS teamed up with BBC in 2008, I want to say 2007, to redo all of the books basically as TV movies, and they're very good. They've got great casts. They're beautifully filmed. The Sense and Sensibility that was done with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet and Alan Rickman in the 90s is breathtakingly beautiful and romantic and wonderful. And even, I mean, we all had our doubts, but the Keira Knightley adaptation of Pride and Prejudice is very, very good as well. It's a totally different feel from the 1995 miniseries that sort of set the tone for everything. The 1995 miniseries has like this soft focus, everyone's in pastel kind of feel to it. And the Keira Knightley one is more realistic. They're all wearing like earth tones and everything has like a higher saturation of color, but they're darker colors, which is really interesting. And she does a really nice job with Lizzie because I mean, Keira Knightley is a beautiful woman, but she's also unusual looking in certain roles. And in this role, she's not a babe. She's got a different kind of look to her, with the dresses and the hair and everything. And so she is an imposing figure because she's intelligent and she's fairly good looking, but she's intelligent, and it like scares people off a little bit, which is a great way to sort of approach that character. But I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't watch any of the movies before you read the books. You should absolutely watch some of the movies, you know, try it on for size, and just know that the books, some people come away saying how dry the books are, but they love the movies. But I think that's because there's flesh and blood people acting it out. I think that's true of a lot of things. And when she wrote the books, she wasn't writing in a modern, flesh and blood kind of way. She was writing in the style of the time, which is very prose heavy and very elevated and high intelligence. And so sometimes you'll hit something and you're like, I have no idea what he just said. And you have to cycle back and read it again. And then you're like, oh, haha, how witty, but it like takes you a minute to get there because the language they're using is very different. But I definitely recommend it. It's kind of an institution, it's sticking around.
Yeah, and one of the things that you besides like TVs and movies, you've got that property that's made it when there's a role playing game about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the card game, Marrying Mr. Darcy, is my favorite card game of all time. If you've never played that, it is so good, and it's extra good when you force everyone at the table to use British accents and behave as their character would behave. So.
Now, one of the things, and we said at the start, is that you do a podcast, and it's called Warda. And for those who might not know about it, what is it? What do you do? What is Warda? Welcome people to Warda.
Yeah, absolutely. Our elevator pitch is very simple. Warda is an original fantasy setting created by myself and my husband Drew. We built the world from scratch, and to explore it, we decided to start playing a game in it, using the Fate system rules. And then we accidentally got turned into a live stream on the One Shot Twitch channel. And then we were like, well, we've got all this content. We may as well chop it up and turn it into a podcast. And we've been going strong for over a year now, and well over 100 episodes. And we are, by golly, we are exploring that world we built. And it's taking on new life every week, and it's bananas. So the elevator pitch is Warda is the aesthetic and class system of Downton Abbey meets the intrigue and backstabbing of Game of Thrones, mixed well, served over ice, and garnished with Agatha Christie. It is an Edwardian aesthetic world. So Downton Abbey is the Edwardian period, the 1900, 19 teens time period. So that aesthetic for, the manor houses and the families clinging to old tradition. And meanwhile, in America, women are fighting for the right to vote, and factories are booming, and industry is booming, and the Industrial Revolution is happening, and, all that good stuff on the other end. But, on the upper end of everything, the wealthy are struggling to maintain their wealth and not get sucked into too much change, because that would disturb their way of life. We're both fascinated with that time period because of things that I've talked about on this podcast already, about how we as a modern audience are obsessed with the idea of a class system because we don't think we have one, and we do. And we love that delineation between classes as something we can play with, even though we would hate to have it enforced in real life, because life was miserable for people back then. So I love that aesthetic. I love the fashion from that time period as it transitioned out of the Victorian era and into the 1920s, 1930s, which was very sleek and boxy and glamorous, and mobile. We're leaving the era of the bustle and the corset, and we're transitioning into this sort of heavy beaded flapper kind of stuff. But there's still Victorian elements about the clothing. But it's changing style, which I really love. And we love the idea of, the social struggles, like the women trying to get the right to vote in America, and the Industrial Revolution happening, and rights for workers and things like that. So we wanted to incorporate those things into the world that we were building. But everybody loves a good mystery. Everybody loves a good murder mystery. Everybody loves, in Game of Thrones, the kind of aspect of intrigue being like these high houses that have been around for centuries are just stabbing each other in the back left and right, and like scrambling for power. So we tried to incorporate all of those things into the world. And then, of course, Agatha Christie is the murder mystery aspect. We play around with, there's always a murder. You know what I mean? Like there's always a murder mystery happening. But we also play around with sort of like Oscar Wildean comedy of manners type stuff too, which is really fun. But we've taken all these concepts that we really like from other media and from history, and we wanted to incorporate it into a world that we could use to sort of explore fantasy elements that haven't been explored in that way before, in our opinion. And it turns out, because when we built Warda, it was January of 2016, I think. It turns out that a lot of what we've built is extremely relevant social commentary. And we've kind of leaned into that. That's not to say that the podcast and the show is very political. I wouldn't say that it is political at all, but if you're looking at it and you're actually taking in what's being presented, there's a lot about our world that's reflected in the world of Warda. So basically, it's a class system society with a lot of social unrest, because the ruling classes, the upper classes, are all fae. The social ladder of Warda consists of several different cultures and races of fae, magic wielding creatures and beings, and then at the bottom of the ladder, basically the group that's holding the ladder up are human beings. So humans are at the bottom of this class system. They're the working class. They're the farmers. They're the factory workers, the dock workers, the shippers. They don't have a lot of money. They live short lives because they're human. And the fae go on for centuries because they're fae and they live a long time. So anytime humans get, hot under the collar about something and they try to stand up to the fae kind of just ignore them because they're going to die in 50 years. It doesn't matter. Like, there's no point in getting involved in it. And so we wanted to see what would happen if we built a world like this and explored it. What happens when, the society is built on this foundation of class system and the classes that are in charge live a long time. And the class that's at the very top, the Seelie, they live basically forever. Nothing changes. So we've been exploring all these themes and through this lens, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure that this was a world that anybody could step into and see themselves. The fae cultures that we've created are very specific and very different from anything I've read anywhere else. We have the 4 elemental fae. Obviously, we would have to, right? So the Sylvani are earth fae, the Johnny are air fae, the Afridi are fire fae, and the Nayati are water fae. And then underneath them, we have fairies, which are like Tolkien elves, so human-sized, human-shaped, pointy ears, pretty mundane. We have goblins, which are small mushroom and fungus-based fae. Brownies, which are rodent-based fae that are also kind of like halflings. They're kind of like hobbits, but they have like animalistic features to them. There's pixies, which are, about a hand tall, Tinkerbell style pixies, and then humans at the bottom. And so it's this vibrant world filled with gender diversity, racial diversity. Every race has different skills and different talents that they're particular to, but anybody can kind of do anything. There's room for that. We have like I said, a vast spectrum of gender diversity as well. Johnny are genderless, but they can choose to represent as a gender if they want, as are several of the different fae races, which is really cool. Goblins reproduce asexually, and it's through their death cycle, which is wild. I've never seen that done before. And we just every time we come up with something new, we dig a little deeper, and we spread a little wider in this world, in this sandbox, and we keep discovering new things. We have a very active Discord server online where our fans can talk to us all the time, and where we can engage them about their opinions on things. And so one of the things that we've built as a foundation for Warda is that our Patreon patrons are involved directly, and our fans as well are involved directly in the creation of the world and the expansion of the world. So like we laid out all the foundations for the races and the structure of the city and the guilds and how everything worked. Like we built the playground. And now that we have this podcast out there in the world every week, and we have this Discord server, people can come and play on the playground and then ask questions and help us build more playground, which is really, really cool that we have this constant conversation open with everybody about characters they'd like to see more of or how things work. We do a monthly Q&A on the Discord where we tune in live and people can ask questions and we answer them live on the air like a radio show. We're constantly building and working and developing things. And the podcast comes out every week. Like I said, occasionally I'll release short stories that we've written set in the world, me or Drew or one of the Patreon patrons may write a fan fiction and then send it to us for submission. And as long as it all jives with the rules of the world, we'll stamp it as canon and we'll put it up on the website. We wanted to build something collaboratively, and we wanted to build something that people would want to come and play in. And I think that we've got a good start on that. But we're always opening the doors to new people. Even if you aren't big into tabletop gaming, you really don't need to know anything about role-playing games to enjoy the podcast. The format might be a little strange to you if you don't know anything about tabletop gaming, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing about Warda, the podcast, are the characters and the stories that we're telling collaboratively at the table. So we played in Fate for a while, but we are switching over. Our next big story arc, which is starting in a couple months here, is going to be set in the Blades in the Dark system, which is very exciting. But we are about to wrap up our second major story arc called Winds of Change. The finale is coming out this month, and it's not an actual play finale like the rest of the show is, where it's the microphones at the table while we're playing the game. The finale for Winds of Change is a full production, a full audio production, like an audio drama. We wrote it, we scripted it, we recorded it. I am slaving away over the edits to make sure that the soundscaping is there, the sound effects, the music, the transitions, and that everybody's voices sound as good as possible. And it is so impressive what's come out of this as a project. We're very, very excited to share it with people. And so now is a really good time for people to jump in. There's a lot of backstock audio to listen to if you like to binge. And if you don't like to binge, you don't have to jump in all the way back at the beginning. You could jump in at the top of Winds of Change if you want, or you can hang on a little bit. What we're going to do is release soon here. We're going to release like a short, 10-minute or less. This is what Warda has been about so far, kind of catch-up episode. That people will be able to listen to so that then they can enjoy the full audio production of the finale without having to go back if they don't want to. Because now is such a good time to jump in. You'll be able to jump in now with that and with the finale, and then move into in between big story arcs. We do glimpses, which is like an anthology. So we do basically like short stories set in the world. We'll do a game here with these people, a game there with those people, and we release them to sort of cover the span of time between the previous story and the next story. And it's a good way to sort of fill that time, but it's a good thing to do also because each glimpse is like a one-shot game. It might be 2 or 3 chapters on the podcast, but it's one game with one cast, and then the next glimpse will be a totally different game with a totally different cast. So again, it's a good way to sort of get a feel for the world without committing to hours and hours of podcast.
That's awesome. I was going to ask, where should somebody, jump in? Because I know with like some actual plays, well, do you start at episode 1? Do you start at like the start of a story arc? Like, where do you go? Especially, and then with like audio dramas, do you need to listen to all of it? Do you start, at the beginning or certain seasons, but you have already answered my question.
Yeah, I mean, the first story arc, if you go back to the beginning of the podcast, is called Curiosities, and it is super fun. It was us learning how to do live streams. So, the first couple of episodes are a little long and a little wonky because we're trying to figure it all out. But as we get going, we start to edit more and we start to get a better handle on it. Curiosities is about a half Ifriti, half human magic cop named Emberlar. And his mother is the head of the high house of the Ifriti, the Fire Fae. So he's got an interesting position in the world. It's about him and his friend Owen, who is a half water fae, a half gene Nayati. And she runs a curiosity shop, basically. She's kind of a fence in the black market, which is interesting because they're best friends, and he's a cop and she's doing illegal stuff. And then their third party member is a pixie named Tippin. And Tippin is, like many pixies, very curious about the world, very interested in the lives of the big folk, and keen to live the most of his life before his year is up, because pixies only live for 1 year. And so Curiosities is a lot of murder mystery and a lot of intrigue, and some cool flashbacks. There's a prom episode that I'm particularly proud of, about when Emberlar and Owen went to prom when they were in school. And then there's a set of glimpses between that and Winds of Change. And so those glimpses are a good place to sort of get a sampler platter of what the game feels like and what the world feels like. And then Winds of Change is about a human who is a weather thief. He steals weather from the Weather Guild and uses it to cause havoc. Another pixie named Gist, who is the fastest pixie in Amangrad. Amangrad is the city. A goblin merchant banker named Iggly Twitchwiggler III, and he's kind of the Ebenezer Scrooge of Warda, except instead of hoarding all the money, he's making deals with people constantly, so everyone owes him a favor. He's like a spider with this big web of resources at his fingertips all the time. And then Kalaith Serene of House Serene, so the only daughter of the Water Fae's high house, who is just coming of age and is supposed to get married soon to the highest bidder. And the four of them inadvertently get tossed together to have a small adventure that turns into a big adventure that turns into political upheaval, and how everything just sort of gets way out of control way fast. It's a really great story though, and there's a lot in it that's fairly relevant. So but yeah, so we're excited about that finale coming up this month in October.
I cannot imagine. I mean, the work that people do for their actual plays already astounds me, because I do mine, and it's just very basic, like putting the sound files together, and I tried to do music or background noise, and it's just like I don't have time in the day to do everything. And just like a produced audio drama with all of that stuff that goes into it, it blows my mind just even thinking about like the work that you are doing on it right now.
It's definitely a lot of work. And like I said at the beginning, I never in a million years thought I'd be podcasting. I never thought I would be involved in the tabletop role-playing community online. I had no idea that this was going to be my life at this point. But it's such an amazing way to tell stories and to build things together collaboratively. And I'm really proud of Warda and what we've done with it so far. And we're constantly looking for new people to chime in and help us learn more and build more and make it better and bigger. So we hope if you're listening that you'll check it out. You can go to welcometowarda.com to visit our webpage. You can follow us at Welcome to Warda on Twitter. We're constantly posting little tidbits about story and character, and we do a daily post with an image direct from Amgrad. So there's pictures of architecture and gardens and nature and stuff with quotes from the world. And you can follow me at Dreams to Become on Twitter. And if you'd like to take a listen, you can go to warda.simplecast.fm and check out the podcast there, or you can find it on any of your podcatching apps. If you do listen to it and you like it, review us on iTunes, leave us a rating and a review. That really helps us get seen. And if not on iTunes, tweet it out to people, let people know. And if you want to join the Discord, message us on Twitter and we will send you that invite, because it is such a great community and people are so inventive, and you will be so surprised at how much detail comes from the discussions we have all the time, and how involved you can get. But we'd love to have you join us. So definitely check that out.
Look at that, wrapping everything up nice
Bam!
and neat without me having to ask. Bam! That's awesome. You got this down. I don't even have to ask anymore. Awesome. And I know, like, I have it on my podcast app now for me to listen to. And I told somebody else, I was like, man, I'd really love to listen to podcasts, except during the summertime, the kids are at home and I can't do what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm finally catching up. Like, I finally caught up on one of my podcasts today. I'm like, yes, I've listened to all 7 of your episodes. Now I have to listen to all 15 of this other podcast. But I'm working my way through, and I'll be listening to Warda, because it's one of those podcasts where I'm like, damn, I just want to listen to it. But I did have a quick question about about Warda. What made you and the group decide to switch to the Blades in the Dark system? Because I had not heard about it until talking with Ree of the Magpies podcast that uses the Blade in the Dark system. And based on their first episode, I picked up the book and I was like, damn, this is
so cool.
A super awesome. Yes, a super awesome system.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the decision for you all to move to it?
That's a great question. So we started Warda in Fate as a game, because Fate has rules, but you don't have to use them. You can kind of not use them if you want. So we used Fate, but modified it for our purposes. As the year went by, we kind of talked about maybe sitting down and creating our own role-playing game. And we've been kicking that idea around for a while. We've actually gone through several drafts of some mechanics. But you know how it is when you start to get into, game design and you try to reinvent the wheel. Because you're like, I will make a game that no one else has made, and it will be a good game and people will like it. And then you realize that none of that is necessary, and you can just borrow this from this other system and it works much better. Game development is wild, guys. So we are, Drew and I are working on original RPG mechanics. We play tested some of it at Gen Con this year with some trusted friends and allies. And it's not ready. We were hoping that it would be ready for Storms of War, which is going to be the next story after Winds of Change. But we just it's just not quite there yet. And we realized that Blades in the Dark is the system we need for Storms of War. Storms of War is almost exactly the same situation as Blades in the Dark. And so we were like, this is perfect. We're just going to do this for Storms of War, and we'll keep working on our mechanics and we will get there eventually. So yeah, Fate was good to explore the world to start with, because it's very loosey-goosey is what we used to say. And there was an accompanying dance when we were on the live stream. We would do the loosey-goosey dance together. But I mean, Drew read through Blades in the Dark and was like, this is exactly what we need. And I read through it and was like, yeah, you're right. So Storms of War is going to be set in Blades in the Dark because it's exactly what that needs. And you'll see what I mean more about it when we start to get into Storms of War as far as how that's set up. But we do, what's cool is glimpses, the first set of glimpses were all using Fate as well, because it hadn't occurred to us to use other systems at that point. But this next set of glimpses that's coming up over the next few months here towards the end of the year are going to be using different systems for every glimpse, which is very exciting. I can say that we are using Star-Crossed. We are using Reflections is one of them, which is a really cool 2-person game about it's actually about two samurai, 2 warriors meeting on the battlefield after they've had a long history of conflict together. And so we took that, and it's going to be a glimpse about two duelists. Dueling clubs and martial arts are very much a part of Warda's society. So like you can go and train in a certain kind of combat with a certain kind of weapon, with a certain kind of magic, and become an expert in that dueling style in Warda. And so we created two duelists, and we played this game of reflections that's really, really emotionally draining, but very fun as well. So we're really excited about the glimpses too, because we get to sort of play in different sandboxes while still staying in the overall playground of Warda, which is very cool.
That's awesome. I am super excited to not only to get into it, but to be hopefully ready by the time, the new season series comes out, so I can to be right there with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even man, I can't wait for this finale to come out because it's so big. It's the biggest thing we've ever done. It's the biggest thing like Drew has ever written scripts for. And it's the biggest thing I've ever produced. And I mean, goodness, like I said, I never thought I'd be audio producing in my life. And I edit audio every day. And yeah, it's just like, it's a total trip, but we're super proud of it. And we're really excited to share it with everybody.
Well, I hope the people that have listened to this episode take the time to check it out, to get into Warda, and to be able to experience what you both are putting together, because from the sounds of it, it's going to be really amazing. And I'm super excited to sit down hopefully soon and start getting it into my ears to listen to.
Yeah, put it in your ear holes.
Well, Aly, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule and for working on the technical side of things to get this to work.
Yeah.
To come on and be a guest on my podcast, because I just, I've been looking forward to having you and talking to you about stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we got it to work technically, and I'm so glad that this worked out to do the show.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.